at the United Nations headquarters in New York. But she described the 6-month suspension by the Nigerian Senate as unlawful and part of an effort to silence her voice in Parliament. And speaking at the IPU meeting, she also alleged that her suspension was linked to her petition accusing the president of the Senate of sexual harassment.
Okay, that's right. So that's the issue we're going to be taking up. She said, that Senator Natasha said, it's all injustice. So we're going to be looking at her cry for justice. And we'll be looking at that through the eyes of the Chief Executive Officer of the School of Government and Politics, Dr. Obi Pax-Harry. And we've also got Dr. Miro Mandara, who is a member of the Voice for Inclusion and Equity for Women, VIEW. Many thanks for coming on Kakaaki, the African Voice. Now, I don't know if you were listening to what we were discussing during the newspaper review. And yes, it's a cry for injustice, but there's a growing school of thought that says that Senator Akpoti-Uduaghan shouldn't necessarily have gone to the IPU. What do you make of that?
All right, Dr. Obi, let's start with you.
Oh, good morning, everybody. Well, I'd want to first of all say welcome to the month of women. Regarding what's happening in Nigeria right now, yes, sad it is, but I want to look at it not just through the eyes of the International Women's Month, but also through the eyes of the Nigerian woman. I think that it's become a personalized issue, which it should not be. I think that it would have been very important to keep to the issue of the emancipation of the woman, where that needs not just on the political spheres, but that in this month of celebration of women, that Nigeria should have been given opportunity to convert what seems to be a crisis into an opportunity to bring change. And on a personal note, I kind of want to, without being personal, say that I think that it probably is an overkill to take this into the international scene.
All right, Dr. Miro, what are your thoughts on this as well?
Thank you very much for having me. My perspective is that the world is now a global village. Whatever we do in Nigeria, even in the corners of our bedrooms now, with internet, with all the social media, is out in the open. So, for me, it's not the issue of whether Senator Natasha went to New York or not. When Senator Natasha made her presentation on that fateful day, I was in the Red Chamber. And there were a contingent of British parliamentarians visiting Nigeria that day, coincidentally. So everything is already out. So for me, especially in this month, this beautiful month when we celebrate women, the voices of women should not be squashed. And for me, if within the country we do not have a zero tolerance to sexual harassment, where you give a fair hearing, for me, is social justice. Fair hearing to Natasha, fair hearing to Senator Akpabio, fair hearing to everybody. When that is suppressed, when you suppress injustice, when it springs back big time. So as my sister just said, Obi, is no longer about Natasha. It's about my daughters. It's about my granddaughters.
Absolutely.
It's about an opportunity now to really have zero tolerance to sexual harassment. So for me, it's social issue of justice. If you can't get justice at home, you go out, you escalate, and this is what happens when you suppress for too long. Then it snaps.
Okay, Dr. Miro, I'm going to stay with you because you said that there's nothing new, that there's nothing hidden under the sun these days. So it's all out in the public domain. So did Senator Natasha have to go as far as she did then, if it's all out in the public domain?
Yes, she did. In my opinion, people need to have a face to that. In the social media, you hear all kinds of stories. Unless you're using 24/7 of your time, you never get the whole thing. but now you hear her voice. And what has done now is that now we are, as a country, we're having to actually activate the zero tolerance to, to sexual harassment. It also means that, you know what, men and women now have the audacity to bring out what they have been suppressing for the rest of their lives. So for me, I think, and she has a right to. After all, that's a
Absolutely.
group of parliamentarians where they hear each other. She's no longer, she is a parliamentarian of Nigeria, and that is their space where they speak to each other.
All right, Dr. Obi Pax-Harry, listening to Dr. Merua, I hear, expression, freedom of speech, and seeking social justice. But let's also look at the issue of, maximizing the opportunity and speaking to the issues. Since for the past 2 days, there have been protests from Benin to Lagos, some in Abuja, women protesting against patriarchy and exclusion on a wider margin. One would think that this opportunity has also afforded Nigerian women the right to speak out about exclusion in politics, injustice, sexual and gender-based violence, and again, talking about the fact that our democracy has been outsourced to the elites. What sort of resolution or solution or mediation do you think should come after this?
I really, really want to emphasize again that we cannot, as Nigerian women and as Nigerian people, and what Nigeria stands for internationally, miss the opportunity for change. I really do believe that Senator Natasha is her case, really, and not just her case, even the Senate president, at all levels. Nigeria is being given the opportunity to bring change, right? Because where we are in terms of politics, in terms of home front, what happens to widows? It's not just about sexual harassment. It's just the fact that the issue of patriarchy has to be addressed. It's just the fact that the issue of women empowerment, women, being given the opportunity as citizens of Nigeria, right? Not just to express themselves, but to serve the nation. It's very important. It's bad enough that in a Senate of 109, that for our women. So we don't want to miss the opportunity by personalizing a crisis, unfortunately, that have real actors. I think that this is an opportunity for all arms of government, right, to introspect, Nigerian people to introspect. And I do believe that those marches, protests are very important. They've got to be peaceful and they should be allowed. We're in a democracy, right? So from my perspective, I totally agree with Dr. Berry, but I'm just still saying, and this is my perspective on the issue, that yes, processes should be followed, but you're in a country where processes are not followed. I know that, everything that Dr. Berry said is really true. We're in a global, community now. The world is a global community, and yes, she does have her rights and all of that, but rights have to be also exercised, not just judiciously, but in such a way that opportunities are not missed. So I want to add that, right? And I think we need to go right back to ground zero. We need to go back to the design construct of Nigeria. It's just not good enough. I think that it's not just about sexual harassment. It's really about harassment at all levels. For women. It's not just on the political sphere. It's across board. Patriarchy has to be addressed, right?
Okay. Dr. Harry, I think you're calling for a wider conversation on the whole matter, which
Absolutely.
I think does have a lot of support. But let's get back to the issue again. Now, the Interparliamentary Union is an advisory body, of course. Whatever it comes up with, it cannot actually enforce anything on the Nigerian Senate. And the Nigerian Senate has come out to say, well, look, they've taken the action purely on what has happened on the floor of the Senate. Now, do you really think that at the end of the day, by the time the Interparliamentary Union does get to listen to the side of the Nigerian Senate as it said it would, it's going to change anything?
Well, I'm not really optimistic because what happened at the floor of the Senate is absolutely disgraceful because we all saw it. We all saw it. It's all over the media. What actually happened to Senator Natasha, and we've been told that because we're not in the Senate that we don't understand the rules, but they're in black and white. We're reading it. We're following. The world is following it. I hope I'm answering your question.
Yes.
You're doing a good job.
Yeah, I hope I'm answering your question.
Yeah.
You can see I'm also speaking from a place of, conviction that this is a moment that there's what happened on the. I'm not addressing the obvious malady or obvious. I mean, what happened to the senator should not have happened to her, and only happened to her because she's a woman, in my personal opinion. Right, with the rules, right? We know. Look at the suspension. 14 days, it becomes 6 months. But what I'm saying with all of this stuff, the reason I am focusing right on the fact that it's a moment of change. A moment of change gives you the opportunity to introspect. I mean, we need to, even as citizens, we need to, put a demand on all the different, governmental, all the different structures that we have to govern, right? I'm making this really simple, yet speaking from a place of conviction that a moment of change, right? No matter whether it be the court processes, whether it be Nigeria needs change. We're in a moment where, a lot of what is happening across board, right, has to change. But then the issue is women. It's a woman month, right? And there is a controversy. It's around a woman. And that has to be our focus. Like I said, I personally, on a personal note, don't think that we really should have been in the UN. But I mean, a woman that is needs a redress. A woman that is. I mean, I don't think the Senator Natasha is mad. Neither do I think that our distinguished senators are. I just think that there really needs to. I'm trying to be very emphatic about my passion. This is the month of the woman.
All right.
Patriarchy needs to be addressed,
Okay.
right? Disrespect of women needs to be addressed, right? There has to be emancipation of women. The dignity of the woman has to be restored.
All right, Dr. Obi.
In our culture, the woman was respected in the family construct.
All right.
And we need to go back to that structure, that culture where women had dignity in the family. That's how Africa was. That's how Nigeria was.
All
That's
right,
how I
Dr.
grew
Obi
up.
Patari, let me just jump in here and come to Dr. Meru Mandara for a bit. You've talked about dignity. You've talked about, the protection of women's rights. I want to go back to that conversation that happened at the IPU, where the president of the IPU, Tulia Axon, who said and assured that necessary steps will be taken to hear both sides of the issue, and said that these issues, this concern needs procedural fairness by
Yeah.
hearing both sides of the conversation. So both the president of the Senate and that of Senator Natasha. But then again, we saw a comeback by the spokesperson of the president of the Senate, who insisted that the president of the Senate had no obligation to honor an invitation from the IPU because it was an internal parliamentary issue. Now, what we're looking at is fair hearing. You talked about social justice. Do you not think that at this point, it is not just about the president of the Senate, but the entire Senate is, in the social court of people, masses, and in the international community? And maybe for the first time, they may be having some level of duty to protect what's left of Nigerians' brand by actually going to that conversation and explaining their part. Do you think that they will do this? Do they have the political will to actually do this?
I'm not sure they will do that. I mean, the spokesperson of the Senate president wasn't speaking for herself. I'm sure she was given directive to say whatever she was saying, I assume. However, for me, the critical thing are these: there has to be structural changes.
Hmm.
The Senate is I don't know how to describe it. When you see how what happens, the Senate president, who is one among equals, can decide to change your seat at any time. The Senate president can decide you raise your hand till thy kingdom come, and you never ever speak for 4 years in the House. There's just too much power concentrated in certain pockets in our democracy. What are the rules? Why are we not using electronic time sheet for members to click and have their speeches done? Why? So for me, these are significant things. And for me, I'm hoping that this incident will be the catalyst that will give us opportunity now to have a conversation about women representation.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, even if we are 30% of this country, what is the
Yeah.
percentage of women in the parliament? And
Yeah.
are they allowed to speak? And you could see when a man can fight, literally box in the Senate, and it's okay. But when a woman raises her voice, then she becomes named. When a man does something, people brush it aside. When a woman does something, they go and look at her history, her geography, and her genetic constituents of her grandparents that are dead years over. So for me, that is what I mean by social justice and inequity and social equity. And by the International Parliamentary Committee coming into this discussion, you know what? It just shows that we can no longer sweep things under the carpet. Whether they come out to discuss or not, these are conversations that have started among the women's circles, and I hope we never ever get tired.
All right,
Because
quickly, Doctor, let me come in
will
here
hold
for
us
want of
responsible.
time because we'll be touching points maybe in another 7 minutes. Now, the Senate leader, Senator Bamidele Okoyemi of the Senate, said one thing. He said that the chamber have dismissed what it called deliberate misinformation, false narratives circulating in the media and also presented at the IPU. He said, let him unequivocally state that Senator Natasha-Akpabio was suspended solely for her persistent acts of misconduct, blatant disregard for the provisions of the Senate Standing Orders 2023 as amended, gross indiscipline, nothing more, nothing less. And that even going to the IPU, as stated in some quarters, was also against the suspension, outlined that she may not represent Nigeria on any fora until the suspension is lifted. And if you listen to her, when she started her introduction, she said, I apologize because I'm here illegally. Now, a lot of thoughts have also said that is also failure to respect the rule of law. Is there any identity to that conversation in terms of the fact that perhaps there could have been a representation for her, not herself, at that conversation?
So for me, my take is that, and just follow my thought process for a while. This is a lady who's been in the Senate. She's been suppressed. She's not been allowed to speak. Even when she dares to speak, she was literally, for daring to speak, she was suspended. For daring, and when we know what the kind of Senate we have, as a woman, she has a right to go to anywhere in the world and make her case. She went, she needed to, she is not, she's still an elected senator of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. She's suspended. Yes, she's suspended. And whether that suspension is legal or is illegal is something for another day, is for another matter. But she's still an elected member of her constituency. Where would she go? Where would she go? Again, these are the kinds of injustices meted for women that are not. And then if you look at even her suspension, I just heard other controversies coming. The list we saw of people who suspended her, it was an attendance sheet. There's no camera proceedings of the procedure. Excuse me. You and I, others that are not Nigerians, may not understand what I'm talking about. But all of us in this platform that are Nigerians and know the way power plays, know that this young woman was pushed. She was pushed to the stage where she just had to do what she had to do. And you know what? In the interest of women, and I'm really grateful for her that she did what she did, so that it's very clear that now we can decide, yes, we can decide as a country we don't give a damn. The world can go to blazes, but the thing is that the world of women now know what we are. And I think for me, this is a golden opportunity for Nigeria to come out at our best.
Okay, let's round up the conversation with Dr. Pax-Harry. Now, what you seem to be advocating for is to try and find a way to resolve this Senator Natasha issue so that the bigger issues that women are clamoring for can get the attention it deserves, both locally and internationally. Don't you think that moves should be intensified to actually try and resolve this matter domestically so that it actually can be dealt with and so that we can face other gender issues?
Yes, this is my position. I thank you for summing up so eloquently, really, what my position is. But I also lean towards what my sister is saying, that we know, right? We know, as our nation, we know how things are. But because I'm a really unrepentant optimist, I believe that a moment of change has come. I agree totally with everything that Dr. Nebo is saying. Every single thing I agree. We saw this is a trajectory, right? Even our current first lady was disrespected as well, right? Was meted with the same really the same treatment as a woman. Right. So this is not something that is new to us. And if we can just be like, just seize the moment and be dispassionate about it, because illegality, attracts illegality. Well, she says, I'm here illegally. It could just be colloquial, right? She's there because she wants justice. She's there because, she wants, it's really a moment of change. So I don't want to kind of continue to emphasize the obvious. The issue is Nigeria needs, like she said, we need reform at all levels. Our constitution, everything about, Nigeria right now needs to be looked at. It's a moment of introspection, and I do pray that the current administration will seize the moment and probably be the reform focused administration.
Okay, Doc. I think we're just going to have to leave it like that for now. We can go on for the next 2 hours, discuss this thing, and we won't get tired. But we do have to leave it like that for now. We've been looking at issues surrounding Senator Natasha-Akpabio, who has address to the Inter-Parliamentary Union and what it portends, and her cry for justice in the face of perceived injustice. And we've been looking at that through the eyes of the Chief Executive Officer of the School of Government and Politics, Dr. Obi Pax-Harry, and Dr. Miro Mandara of the Voices for Inclusion and Equity for Women View. Many thanks, doctors, for coming on the program.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thanks.
All right, don't go anywhere.